On this Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, I am going to talk about how Jaren Jackson Jr. is growing, he's improving, and the way that he's doing it is really, really exciting. Plus, we're asking way too much of Jay Huff and Jalen Wells. I'm going to ask all of us to stop doing that, including myself. And Grizzlies Warriors game preview, another game on ESPN, another chance for us to talk Grizzlies basketball. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Friday. You've got to get down on Friday. As a wise philosopher once said, fun. Looking forward to the weekend. We are partying here on Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, not Rebecca Black. And you will notice that I did say host. That means no DeMichael Cole. He is very busy getting ready for Grizzlies Warriors on ESPN tonight. Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, of course, is DeMichael Cole. And I am Joe Mullinax, been covering the Grizzlies in blogging and podcasting form for over a decade. I'm a contributor now over at Grizzlead. But of course, you see me each and every time an episode drops, just about here on Locked On Grizzlies. And I'm so glad that you're with me this time out as well. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make DeMichael and myself a part of your Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time an episode drops. And remember, there is a new way to consume Locked On Grizzlies content. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies Daily Newsletter, your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. I was not with you, dear listener, dear viewer, the last time that we had a show. That was the Thursday edition of the podcast. DeMichael Cole did a great job talking about Grizzlies Lakers and all the good and bad and everything in between that came from that contest. But something that really stands out to me, and I would have said it if I had a chance to yesterday, but I'm here with you now, and I'm going to say it. Jaren Jackson Jr. continues to impress, and he does it in new ways. Because the fact that Jaren is out there by himself, without Ja Morant, without Desmond Bane, that's not new, right? We've seen this song and dance before. We know what Jaren is capable of as a scorer of the basketball. And he did that against the Lakers, right? 29 points on 20 shots, 7 of 8 from the charity stripe. That means he's getting to the free throw line. He's drawing contact. He is doing a lot of things on the offensive end that is carrying over from last season. And that's a major plus. Anytime you see growth from a player, you want that to carry on and continue. And that's exactly what Jaren is doing. He is doing his job on that front. He is evolving as a defender too. And that's really fun to watch because this is a guy who is already a defensive player of the year, right? A couple of years ago, he was the defense player of the year. He's probably gone from underrated to overrated to underrated again, all in the span of about 3 seasons, depending on how you perceive what Jaren does defensively. But I would argue that he's now underrated again because I don't think people are fully understanding what he is doing on that end of the floor. And there was a sequence in the game late against the Lakers in the fourth quarter that really stood out to me. And I was happy to see that my good buddy Parker Fleming highlighted it on X because I put a little star when I watch tape or watch games and I'm trying to, come up with ideas for the show or an article, whatever the case might be. I put a little star and said, go back and watch Jaren fourth quarter late in the game. Defense. And obviously it's a little bit deeper than that. But what Jaren has done in terms of growing as a basketball player, not necessarily just as an athlete, not necessarily just in terms of physical growth, because we used to joke about that, if you remember correctly. Oh, Jaren grew another inch, right? People were saying that he was still growing as recently as a couple of years ago, it seems. So this is a guy who at almost 7 feet tall has the physical tools to be an elite defender. And he is an elite defender in the NBA, regardless of your opinion of his Defensive Player of the Year award. couple of years ago. But he is becoming better in terms of reads. And he's analyzing and perceiving the game in a way that is really excited to see. And it really was evident in this play. So LeBron James, JJ Redick, they catch eyes. There's an interaction between Anthony Davis and LeBron. LeBron comes off of a screen, and AD uses a back screen to try to get to the rim for an alley-oop. The only problem for AD is that Jaren Jackson Jr. saw this coming. He literally saw the communication. He was a weak side help defender in this case. He comes off the ball, off of his man, and AD was open. It would have been a dunk, an alley-oop. He deflects the ball, more of a steal than a block. And he really does a tremendous job timing the leap, disrupting the play. And not only does he disrupt the play, this Jaren Jackson Jr., he also runs down the court, hustles, gets the ball, not necessarily in transition, but early in a possession, and doing what we've seen him do time and again, especially against these Lakers, but most nights when it's just him out there as the number one offensive option, taking guys off the dribble, finishing at the rim. One of the best Jaren Jackson Jr. possessions of the year so far. 2 possessions in a row, 1 defensive and 1 offensive. He has seen a lot of basketball be played, right? He has logged a lot of minutes for these Memphis Grizzlies, more minutes to log, safe to say. And this is a guy who has found himself in a position to learn from the likes of Marc Gasol, to learn from the likes of Marcus Smart, other elite defenders. And what made Marc Gasol elite? What made Marcus Smart elite? Not their physical prowess. Marc Gasol is a 7-footer, but nobody's going to look at him and say that he's a physical specimen. He got leaner as his career went on, but his leap ability is not something you're writing home about. His length, his shot blocking in that particular way. He's not DeAndre Jordan, to date myself a little bit in terms of basketball references. He's not going to jump out of the gym and block a bunch of shots. Marcus Smart is an undersized wing. I don't think anybody says he's a true point guard at this point. If they do, they're mistaken. He is not a true point guard. That is not his skill set. What he is, though, is a guy that can defend on the perimeter and a guy that understands angles and timing and picking and choosing his spots to attack passing lanes as well as dribble penetration. That is what Marcus Smart is truly elite at. And you take pieces of that and you combine it with everything else that Jaren has learned over the years from his own experiences, from other players, and you're seeing that puzzle come together more and more on a nightly basis. The way that he was able to make that deflection, not because he's some physical specimen, not because he's somebody that is otherworldly in terms of leaping and re-leaping and all of that stuff. He does it because he anticipates, he times, he reads. And then on the offensive end, he's not just chucking threes anymore, which was something he did oftentimes at an inefficient rate. He shot 7 threes in the game against the Lakers, but that was part of 20 total shots. He made 2 of them, so you still have to respect him to an extent. But where you have to fear Jaren Jackson Jr. is as he creates for himself off the dribble, getting down to the rim and finishing. Only 1 assist. And if you are an everydayer here at Locked On Grizzlies, you know that's something I'm always going to harp on with Jaren. That's the next step for him offensively. And he had a career year last year in that space. That sample size matters a heck of a lot more than 1 individual game. And I'm certainly not going to pick on Jaren in a game where 29 points, 7 rebounds. He did some things that helped keep Memphis in the contest. But I really want you to pay attention. Watch him play defense. He has more steals per game at this stage than he does blocks per game. And that is surprising. If you had watched Jaren's Defensive Player of the Year season, he was a block machine. They called him the Block Panther on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. He has more steals than blocks this year. He's still a force on that end, but he's doing it in different ways. He's continuing on his growth offensively from last season. These are all things to be very excited about. These are all things to look forward to as they develop and as time goes on. Not a ton to be excited about with Ja out and Desmond Bane out, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is more than worth you staying up late tonight and checking out on ESPN him going up against Golden State or any game that Jaren participates in. He is worth your time, to say the least. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Robinhood. Big fan of Robinhood. You should be as well. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors or the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.2.5 for uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Check out Robinhood Gold today. So Jaren Jackson Jr. we need to keep asking more of, right? I think that's an important thing to point out. We need more of Jaren Jackson Jr. More Jaren Jackson Jr. Like you need more cowbell. Again, I keep dating myself with these references. If you get the more cowbell reference, you and I would be friends in real life. Just a shout out to that. We need more Jaren Jackson Jr. What I don't think that we need more of is Jalen Wells and Jay Huff. And the two J's, as I affectionately call them, I wonder, and DeMichael did a good job talking about this on yesterday's show, so I don't want to belabor the point too much, but Taylor Jenkins was riding the hot hand. At least that's how it was interpreted by me, right? And it sounds like DeMichael would agree with that to an extent. He understood the logic of bringing Marcus Smart off the bench, of bringing Zach Edey off the bench. Maybe he didn't see Edey as much as he saw Smart. He definitely agreed with Marcus Smart being a reserve. I disagreed with both of them, to be honest with you. Zach Edey, for obvious reasons. At least they're obvious to me. You have one guy who is the 9th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft. You have a guy who has clearly been invested in by the organization. I wrote about in yesterday's newsletter, the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Make sure you're subscribing to that. I wrote about, I'm not so sure the organization's on the same page with Edey. And I have no inside source. I'm not reporting anything that I've been told. That's just me watching the games and hearing Zach Kleiman talk about teams having to respond to Edey in terms of matchups. And yet now we've had numerous examples of Taylor Jenkins, the head coach of the Grizzlies, doing the exact opposite of that. Jay Huff started this basketball game, a guy who was in the G League last season, a guy who was playing summer league basketball, just trying to get a two-way contract. And then he got a two-way contract and, to his credit, got converted to a full-blown roster spot in Memphis. But they started that guy instead of Zach Edey. And you can make all the arguments you want. The floor spacing. He still is a rim protector. He's a solid rebounder. This guy was not in the NBA full-time this time last year. Zach Edey was in the midst of defending his reigning National Player of the Year acknowledgement and award, and doing so 2 times. Zach Edey is the reigning, or has been the reigning, is now no longer the defending. There will be a new one because he's in the NBA after being a lottery pick. That's Zach Edey. Zach Edey played well against Anthony Davis. Zach Edey had some foul trouble. And again, that's something that Taylor Jenkins struggles with more than most, it would seem, what foul trouble actually is. But the reality is this. Zach Edey has more invested in him than Jay Huff does. Zach Edey has the frame to be able to bring to the table what this Grizzlies team needs from its center. And if your argument is without John Morant and Desmond Bane, that shifts. I'll listen to that argument. But do you really believe Jay Huff is the answer? If you think it would have been Brandon Clark starting and he just missed the game due to injury, okay, I'll hear that too. But once Brandon Clark was acknowledged to not be in the lineup, it should have been Zach Edey starting alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. because he has so much put into him in terms of investment. And it's not like he's playing poorly. He's one of the top 2 rookies in the NBA. So I do not see why there was a move away from Edey being that starter with Brandon Clark out. It should have been Edey. I also don't understand why Jalen Wells is being tasked to be the LeBron stopper right now. Now, you might be saying to yourself, but Joe, he defended LeBron James last week, and I didn't hear you complaining. Marcus Smart was not an active basketball player for the Memphis Grizzlies last week. You know what Marcus Smart was against the Los Angeles Lakers? An active basketball player. You know what Marcus Smart is paid to do? Defend guys like LeBron James. Now, do I expect Marcus Smart to stop LeBron James? No, I do not expect him to do that. Even though Father Time can't stop LeBron James, I certainly don't think that Marcus Smart can. But has Marcus Smart defended LeBron James a heck of a lot more than Jalen Wells has? Absolutely. Is Marcus Smart more capable at this stage of his career to at least limit LeBron and not give him the chance to get to his first look or his first opportunity for a pass? Yeah, I think that that is realistic. Now, you look at how the Lakers are using LeBron James. You could pretty easily argue they're not using him like a guard. They're not using him like a wing. They're using him like a big, like a passing big man like Nikola Jokic or Domantas Sabonis of the Kings. Jokic, of course, of the Nuggets. They are using LeBron in a very interesting way. I give JJ Redick, former content creator like me, a lot of credit. Started from the bottom of content creation. Now he's here as the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron's production is in part because of the schemes that the Lakers are implementing. Also in part because, LeBron is fighting Father Time and winning. But Jalen Wells, as a rookie second-round pick, is not equipped to do what the Grizzlies need him to do against that matchup. Marcus Smart is. Oh, but Joe, Marcus Smart missed a lot of games. You want to ease him back in. You don't want to start him. Wells has been playing well. I get it. But as I detailed recently on this very podcast, why are they having this success? Maybe it's because of the fact that they're playing against the Portland Trailblazers, who are terrible. The Washington Wizards, who are not very good. Two very broken theoretical Eastern Conference contenders in the Philadelphia 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Memphis is having success against teams that are not the Los Angeles Lakers and definitely not the Lakers at home. Lakers on the road, 1-4. Lakers at home, still undefeated after beating the Memphis Grizzlies on Wednesday night. Less of Jalen Wells. I want to see less of Jay Huff. I want them to have roles that are more conducive and available to what they will eventually be. With all the injuries, if you want to argue that's not possible, you have to play John Conchar. I definitely don't want to do that. But Jay Huff should have gotten his 13 or 14 minutes as the reserve. Jalen Wells should have gotten his time as a reserve. Marcus Smart and Zach Edey were slated to be starters on opening night. Zach Edey was available. Marcus Smart was returning from injury, but he was available. Why weren't they on the court for that red-hot Lakers start? But Joe, the Lakers came back, or the Grizzlies came back. Who cares who starts? It's how you finish. Sure, the start of the fourth quarter was a mess too, and I know DeMichael talked about that yesterday. I am concerned with asking Huff and Wells to do things that they are not ready to do. I would argue that Zach Edey is better equipped to be what Memphis needs in this current state. I would argue that Marcus Smart is better equipped to be what the Grizzlies need in this current state. And going into tonight's game against the Golden State Warriors, who are also playing some really good basketball right now, especially at home. If you are the Grizzlies, you need to find ways to pick up these wins, whether they're NBA Cup games or not. I don't care about that. Made that very clear earlier in the week. NBA Cup, whatever. Memphis needs this win because it's a game against the Golden State Warriors at Golden State. This is about playoff seeding down the road. This is about showing that you can knock off a good team. I've seen the Grizzlies beat some bad teams this year. I understand that they're down key players. But they were in the fight against the Lakers despite some of the coaching decisions. Imagine if they put their best foot forward. What are they capable of against the Golden State Warriors? I guess we'll find out this evening. And that is what we'll be talking about next here on Locked On Grizzlies, is what exactly we can expect from Memphis and Golden State on ESPN. Steph Curry, Jaren Jackson Jr., Draymond Green, other names that are performing pretty well for Golden State. We're going to talk all about that and more coming up next. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Say you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you know that a big play is going to happen in the Pittsburgh-Baltimore contest. Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, somebody's going to make the big-time throw to help the team win the game. You have a feeling you know who it is. You're going to check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you can place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll get out of here today with a preview of Grizzlies Warriors. Obviously, that is the big-time contest going on tonight on ESPN, as I mentioned a moment ago. And the Warriors are driven by Steph Curry. That shouldn't really surprise anybody. He's not having the type of game or the type of season that maybe you would expect him to have, but he's getting older, right? He's getting up there in years. He did cook the Dallas Mavericks recently. 37 points on 27 shots, 5 of 12 from beyond the arc, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks. Surprisingly productive from the guard position. And the Golden State Warriors got some bad news on Thursday going into this contest. A sprained ACL for DeAnthony Melton. That means he will not be participating. Old friend of the Memphis Grizzlies, DeAnthony Melton, will not be a part of the contest tonight. But what the Warriors have going for them in terms of losing Melton, they've got depth on their bench. They've got Buddy Hield, who is doing some really remarkable things as a reserve scorer. So maybe they keep him there. They have Jonathan Kuminga, who pretty surprisingly not part of contract extension conversations with the Warriors any longer. Maybe that changes, but how will they use Kuminga? I know that he played 28 minutes against the Mavericks and was a big part of them having some success in that contest. Those two guys off the bench, or maybe one of them replaces Melton in the starting lineup, could be a possibility. The big guy that really is a key for me in this game, especially with so many Grizzlies scores out, is going to be Draymond Green. Draymond Green is arguably, I wouldn't even make the argument, I think it's true, he's the early front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, the way that he has these Warriors defending. Draymond has always been that stats guy that's kind of weird, right? He scored 11 points against Dallas, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, a lot of racking up of numbers in a variety of different ways. Draymond Green is doing things defensively. You know how earlier in the show I talked about Jaren and his timing and his understanding of offense and being able to read and sniff out a lot of what these teams are trying to do? Draymond Green is doing that to the nth degree. He is really putting on a show on that end, similar to what Marc Gasol did back in his Defensive Player of the Year season over a decade ago now. Marc Gasol, a bigger body, obviously has that physical advantage on Green, not as fleet of foot as Draymond is, but they both are very cerebral in terms of how they attack rotations, how they perceive and analyze what the offense is trying to do to them. They oftentimes foresee what is coming at them before the offense actually executes it. And that is extremely valuable, where you're lacking in length and size like a Draymond, what you're lacking in foot speed like Marc Gasol did all those years ago, you can make up for if you have a very high basketball IQ. And for all of Draymond Green's warts and faults, I don't think anybody is saying that his basketball IQ is low. What will be interesting about Draymond Green, though, is how the Grizzlies decide to attack Draymond Green. I'm guessing you can figure out who I would start at the 5 in this contest. It would be 7'4" Zach Edey. Why am I putting Zach Edey out there? Because guess who ain't 7'4"? Draymond Green. Draymond Green is 6'6" playing in the front court. And again, he's played against bigger guys his entire career. There's nothing really that different for him. Trace Jackson Davis is next to him. He's 6'9". Maybe he would draw the Edey assignment. But the unique thing about Green compared to other bigs, if this is a matchup that Taylor Jenkins would maybe be nervous about in the past, Draymond hit 2 of his 4 3-point attempts against the Mavericks, but that is not something that you associate Draymond Green with in terms of being a 3-point sniper. That is not a strength of his. He's doing really well right now. Again, I want to stress that. He has been doing a good job hitting those shots so far this season. In fact, 45.7% from beyond the arc. That is very different from his 32.2% three-point percentage over the span of his entire career. I would test that if I were the Grizzlies, and I would also test Draymond's ability to stay out of foul trouble in his own right. In only 27.5 minutes played a game, he's averaging 3.5 fouls. Can Edey abuse Green on the block? Maybe he can't. Maybe I am not giving Draymond Green enough physical credit for defending the low post. I do know that Zach Edey has almost a full foot on that guy. And if you're putting Draymond Green out on Jaren Jackson Jr., a more perimeter-based big, that is still giving you a mismatch because Draymond Green has gone on record on his very own podcast saying that he cannot defend and the Warriors cannot really defend Jaren Jackson Jr. So how are they going to handle that front court matchup is something I am interested in personally watching. I would lean in to Zach Edey in that particular instance. I'm also interested, again, I mentioned DeAnthony Melton out due to an ACL sprain. How do they fill in those minutes? Is my boy AirPods. I talked about Brandon Podziemski a lot leading up into last year's draft. He's been doing some good things in the past for Golden State, a little bit cold to start this season. How is he going to handle that? I'm interested to see if AirPods gets more run. Maybe it's Moses Moody. Maybe it's Gary Payton II, who hasn't played a ton so far this season. Who gets those opportunities is going to really bear watching. And Kevon Looney. If you're familiar with Kevon Looney, going back a few years, the Grizzlies-Warriors series and playoffs past, Looney has been an excellent rebounder, a guy that's extended possessions, lots of tap-out opportunities. Currently coming off the bench for the Warriors, another guy that maybe they bring in replacement of Melton. I don't know that they would go that big. But if Looney is going to be a reserve in that space, how he handles the Jay Huffs, hopefully Brandon Clarks of the world, depending on his injury status going into the contest, all that bears watching. But for me, the biggest question is how do you attack Draymond Green, who is having one of the better defensive seasons of his career? And that's saying something because obviously Draymond Green is known for his defensive prowess. He's had a red-hot start, and he's a major reason why this Golden State team has the record that they do going into this game. The Warriors really showing off some strong fight, not just at home, but overall. 9-2 is Golden State. Memphis is going to have to play some really good basketball to win. You have to put Draymond Green under stress points. I think the best way to do that, you give him the tip of the cap with his mental acumen for the game of basketball, test him physically. Can he handle Jaren Jackson Jr. on the perimeter, or are you really going to let Zach Edey try to go to work on a guy that he's almost a foot taller than and outweighs by about 60 or 70 pounds? There's a mismatch one way or the other, and on the other end of the floor, while Draymond is an able and willing and successful passer, it's not like his three-point shooting or anything on the perimeter in terms of a handle is really going to make Edey struggle that much. I see Edey as the X factor in this game. Let me know what you're thinking on X. Hit me up at Joe Mullinax, or of course, you can always on YouTube or elsewhere hit me up in the comments. Thank you so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. Make sure that you are liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. It is literally all good. Make sure you're checking us out each and every time that an episode drops. Make us a part of your Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. And remember, we have a newsletter now. Check out the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Lots of great content from me and so many other folks. LockedOnDaily.com. That is LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe to your favorite podcast newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. Check out Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Make it a part of your inbox media consumption each and every time a newsletter and episode drop. Until Monday, when we have other basketball games to talk about, of course, the Grizzlies heading into and away from California, thank goodness, right? Getting out of Los Angeles and Golden State, going to have a home and home with the Nuggets, which is always interesting. Sunday and Tuesday night, the Grizzlies are playing Denver. Denver hanging out in Memphis for a couple of days. So we'll talk about Nikola Jokic, the season he's having, and the Denver Nuggets, and so much more on our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Until then, I'm Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Make sure you're subscribing to our newsletter. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're checking out my stuff over at Grizzly as well. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you on Monday. See ya.